This is the Slots and Sockets podcast, episode number 61. I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime.
Hello, Penguin.
Happy Friday. It's Thursday. Yes, Pre-Friday. And just a little bit of good news. The Slots and Sockets podcast was just recently voted the #1 tech podcast on every platform by my mom. Hi, Mom.
Oh, goodness.
I couldn't resist. I couldn't.
Oh, my gosh.
We've got some kind of interesting leaks that came out since the last show. Why don't we get started with some Zen 5 stuff? I'm sorry, Zen 7. I'm too off.
So
I'm two Zens off.
Yeah, 2 off. So, I mean, the thing is that this is so early. Nothing on Zen 7 has been finalized, but they've got leaks. It's going to have, 30 plus cores.
Well, on the Epic variant, it's going to have 33 cores with actually 3D stacked silicon. Not just like they're laying silicon on top of silicon. It's they're doing stuff, and they're apparently going to be chasing a lot of frequency too.
Well, and you know, what we're also probably going to see, and my guess is Zen 6, which is going to be, my guess, the last AM5 that we'll see before it goes. I expect 7 to be a different socket.
It could be
7. It might be. I don't think people should really be like, holding their breath that we'll see Zen 7 on AM5. It might happen. I wouldn't say it's like impossible, but I also would say it's probably not ideal.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we're expecting to see in Zen 6, which is really going to help the non-X 3D, and I think some of the 3D stuff too, but it's definitely going to close the gap, is going to be the IO die.
Yeah.
And they're updating their RAM controller, which has kind of been the Achilles heel. But then the notion is what they're doing with Zen 7 is a ton of cores in some respects. So I'm guessing we probably will see some sort of a Threadripper return.
Yep.
Possibly in Zen 6 too. I mean, we could see this a couple of generations. We start doing this again. But I think the biggest thing is stackable. They're talking about stacking more things. So right now you've got chiplets, and I think the notion is what they're thinking about, what the plan with Zen 7 is stacked chiplets.
Yeah. And stacking them also kind of takes advantage of the ability to get it closer to the surface of the IHS, so you don't have quite as much material in there. There's a lot of benefits to stacking in addition to footprint. Now, you did say probably not going to be AM5, but if we remember, Zen 1, Zen 2, and Zen 3 were all AM4, so we had 3 generations. Zen 5 was
4, 5, and 6 will be on AM5.
That's right.
It kind of does align with what we'd expect, what they've done in the past. So again, I don't really think we'll see anything crazy here.
Right.
I would be surprised if 7 made it on Zen 7 made it on there, but I mean, they're really making a lot of changes. If you look at what they're doing with Strix Point, like that really points us to the future. Because in all honesty, while it's faster on a 9800X 3D, they've really fixed a lot of the Zen 5 issues. The controller the DDR controller is fixed in Strix Point. It has much better ability to use the the bandwidth from the CPU to the GPU, but also to the RAM. And
Right.
so it's been kind of that's their thing. And that's why, in all honesty, when we look at Zen 5, that's why the the non-X3D parts sort of fell on their face a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that the 3D really is a really big piece because it really solves a lot of the shortcomings that the current architecture has. Um, it will be interesting to see the uplift when we fix that and we add X3D. There's a chance that with both of those, you're not going to see dramatic speed changes. So we'll see.
Might.
Um,
Yeah.
Zen 7 looks could be very interesting, but what I would just caution this far out, nothing is set in stone.
Yeah.
We
I
had
mean,
they haven't taped out and finalized Zen 6. Um, so I don't everything from Zen 6 and 7 right now is just rumors. It might be more accurate rumors, but nothing is done until they start taping things off and going to TSMC and really starting to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and
right.
really finalizing the product and start getting engineering samples.
Now, kind of on the other hand, uh, to be perfectly blunt, I think they're swinging for the fences over and over again just because Intel has been dropping the ball left and right. So, it's entirely possible that this leak that we saw from Moore's Law is dead, and I'll put the link to the video in the description. Um, is potentially what they're hoping to get and not necessarily what they're actually planning to do, which in a lot of cases these leaks can be that. Um, but I think what they're doing is very smart because they're taking advantage of the former 800-pound gorilla sleeping on the clock. Um,
I think they're also trying to learn from what Intel did
mhm,
and really, rather than coasting, they're really pushing the saying, we're not going to repeat here. We're going
yep,
to keep this progression moving forward.
yeah,
I think they realize that they're in a really good spot, and if they keep innovating, they have a really good chance of just completely removing Intel from all competition from them
yeah,
in every which shape and form. Because if Intel doesn't get there, look, let's be honest here, looking forward, of any tech company that needs a win and needs to have a really strong next generation, it's Intel.
yeah,
And I'm not talking graphics cards. I am talking processors,
yep.
desktop processors.
Their mainline business, because I mean, they're still
Yeah,
getting outsold at least 4-1 by
and
AMD.
well, I would say it's probably low. I think those are.
Yeah,
Uh,
they may be
I would
conservative
be very
estimates.
hard
Yeah,
pressed to find the 1 in 5 who are going out and buying a 265 or a 285 Core Ultra.
yeah,
I just don't see those selling, especially at the price points. I mean, I get that you've got the Intel fanboys, so maybe that's who's buying them, but there can't be that many people who are sitting there saying, I'm not going to buy the faster stuff.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
because in every which way, shape, or form, I get now that it's priced lower that maybe there's a reason to do that. Maybe if you're not gaming and you're purely into specific workloads, then Intel might be a more attractive piece. But um, let's be honest, I don't see that being the core piece. And Intel has to be thinking that if they don't fix this, they will lose their market.
hmm
So,
which they have been steadily handing over to AMD and to other folks. So, I
yeah,
mean, that's it's bad news, but to kind of what you said, kind of use this as a tease for later. Um, Intel is still doing things on the graphics side, interestingly enough. But
there's a lot of stuff that's kind of funky things about Intel. Let's just talk
yeah,
about Intel for a couple of things.
sure.
They killed off, is it DeepSeek, their
Mm,
AI library
it's
for
deep something. I can never
some.
remember what it is.
There's an Intel thing, and they're not using it anymore. They discontinued support for it, and it was using the APUs, and it was supposed to be their AI thing. And I think they realized that nobody was buying it, so there's no point in supporting something that no one was buying, and B, nobody was using.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the and
I
that
mean, I
goes
hadn't even
into
heard of it.
I know exactly. But then the other half of this is you've got, I mean, Intel is sort of leaking themselves. I mean, it's their official account that's more or less, you know, saying, hey, we might have something at Computex
Stay
with a
tuned.
yeah, exactly. Stay tuned. But
Yeah.
B770 or maybe a I don't know. There's a couple of things that we might see. Um, but the thing is that you've got, and my guess is these are like just random accounts or like, marketing people who are asking these questions like, hey, I
Hmm.
want a B770 for gaming. Said no one. Um, I guess unless you work for Intel and you're like, yeah, I want to have that so I can use what I
I
made.
mean,
Mommy, look what
before,
I made.
yeah. Well, no, before I bought my 7900 XTX, if Intel had something that competed with the 9070 or competed with the XTX, yeah, I would certainly give them a look. Because they're putting in the work and they're showing that they're willing to do the work. And I mean, yeah, they're the underdog in the graphics segment by miles, not just a mile, by miles. And nobody's really complained about major issues with the cards lately. The driver quality seems to be there. It's certainly a hell of a lot better than Nvidia's. And they're working hard on doing this. And yeah, I
The only concern, and I bet you this is probably something that gamers are thinking about,
sure.
is if they don't get enough sales, are they going to continue to support this?
I
Because
think what would
I,
happen, yeah, I think what would happen is they would probably roll off the driver maintenance to a small team that probably also works on their integrated drivers as well, and just
but you
say,
talk about
just
drivers
keep
being
this from
good.
crashing.
Well, that's it though. And like, it's kind of like, game, like, if I had an FX 5700, like, an old, like the old hair dryer, right? The
Hmm.
old, even in NVIDIA, there comes a time when you kill off support.
Yeah.
My only concern with Intel graphics is I do not feel confident that they're not going to kill off driver support. And once they kill off driver support, it's a paperweight.
Yeah.
It's something you're going to put on the board and say, oh, yeah,
It's
remember that time that Intel made discrete graphics cards? And
it's a shelf ornament at that
it's a
point. Yeah.
shelf ornament. But even then, I mean, it might even be something even worse than that. Do you remember Intel?
Who?
Exactly. That's the risk here. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a real risk. So, I mean, from that perspective, of anybody who needs an absolute win, and they need to start stringing along a lot of wins,
Yeah.
I just don't know if there's people that believe, and I question if Intel employees have the confidence that they can win because they're going through another round of layoffs.
Hmm.
Um,
Well,
so
layoffs at Intel happen pretty much every
all
year,
the
no matter
time,
what. I mean,
I know.
it's like if you didn't get laid off at Intel this year, you're probably getting laid off next year. Um, and that's kind of what my experience was. Like there were several people that I worked with that got laid off, and then 6 months later they came back working pretty much the same job, just on a different team. And it's just Intel is so unbelievably bloated that they
Well,
could probably cut half of their head count and still
but
make
I
money.
believe that's what they're doing with these last couple of, they're talking 20-30%. I don't think they're going to hiring binge and bringing these people back.
They might not.
They're
Yeah.
legitimately getting rid of these people and
Yeah.
they're not rehiring.
Right.
Unless
Or they're
there's a
hiring in
position they
other
need.
geos where it's cheaper.
Possibly. Um, possibly. So,
Yeah.
um, but I think the big topic that we have, and this is pre-Computex, and I bet this is starting to think that maybe NVIDIA is doing this on purpose again,
Mm-hmm.
because we've got reviews of 5090 laptops and they absolutely suck.
Oh, no. It's not called the 5090 laptop. It's called the RTX 5090 Turbo.
Okay, the 5090
Yeah, the RTX 5090 really
in
sucks.
laptop shape.
In a
But
laptop. Yes, it sucks in a
it's
laptop.
absolutely is it's like 3 to 4% better. Now, the only like in performance, the only positive thing on this is that it's slightly less power hungry than the 4090 laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So you'll get 6 minutes of battery life playing
instead of
Fortnite instead of
yeah,
5.
it's instead of 5, yeah. Yeah, this I kid you not, this is going to be this whole 50 series in laptops
Mm-hmm.
are going to be clones of the 40 series. If you have a 4060 Ti, I think they had a 4060 Ti on a laptop. Maybe it's just a 4060. And you want to go get the newest 5060, it will be about the same performance. The only positive thing is you're going to have different processors, but even then, you could buy a 4060 with like the 14900HX or even the 285 and 265 H, which is
Mm-hmm.
the laptop variant of those. And you could have gotten those with um, Hawk Point on the AMD side. The positive thing that we might see, and where I think we probably would see some really bump in some performance, is if you were to put a 5070 or a 5080 with Strix Point, and then you would have really interesting performance
Mm-hmm.
where you'd have Strix Point with a real APU and a real processor for regular stuff, and then for gaming you could turn on more intensive. That'll be interesting to see what and how we do pairings.
Yeah.
Now, before I jump over to 30 to 395, anyway, before we jump ship on this one, um, these laptop graphics cards are if I mean we saw an uptick on the 5090 over the 4090 desktop version.
Mm-hmm.
You will not see that. You will
Yeah.
see,
You'll see it numerically, but you won't necessarily see it visually.
I
You won't
guess,
be
if
able
you're
to
going
tell
to
the
turn on
difference.
multi-frame gen and have a bunch of fake frames, then it will
Hey,
be faster because your
with
counter will say it's faster.
with multi-frame gen, it beats a 5090 desktop GPU by 5x.
I know, right? That'll be. I'm waiting for them to say something like that.
Right?
Desktop graphics on laptop form factor
Well,
only need
that wouldn't be
40
the
watts
first
of
time they've
power.
claimed that.
Well, exactly.
And
So
that's actually why I think with the 30 series and above, they dumped the M from the 3080. Like the 3080 in my laptop is a 3080. It doesn't say mobile or
yeah,
laptop or anything like that. It just says the 3080. It's an 8 gig 3080. And if we start comparing these to the desktop variants and just say, God, these suck. What are you doing, NVIDIA? Maybe they'll start bringing the branding back so that they can differentiate between the mobile variants, because I could legitimately publish results from my Zephyrus G15 right now and call it an RTX 3080 with 8 gigs. And they'd be like, we never sold an RTX 3080 with 8 gigs. Oh, yes, you did.
well, I mean
And you
that's
called it
just
a
it's
3080,
marketing.
just like the desktop part.
It's marketing.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And that's the thing, is like we need to call this stupid marketing out, like we need to call out the stupid marketing on the Intel Core Ultra 9 285K
well, AMD is equally as bad. The
or
395 AI
AMD's
Max
more, yeah.
plus minus factory
AI
plus
Max Plus, we're going to call it this
whatever.
stupid thing because nobody can remember it. Dude, the part numbers on I can't recite off the top of my head what part I have in my laptop, my AMD part, because the laptop parts were already stupidly named and they just made it worse. Like
Yeah.
9600 or 9600 X3D, sure, easy to remember. 9800 X3D, easy to remember. 5925HX
I know. I
LMNOP.
know. Dude, we
Anyway,
get it.
preaching to the choir. So, kind of turning back to Intel, we do have two very interesting things going on. At the same time, we have people on X asking for the B770 to be launched, and Intel is responding directly with "Stay tuned."
Yeah, I mean, so my guess is that Computex will have an announcement from Intel. We'll have a B770. I know that there's a couple of manufacturers that have kind of toyed with the notion of a dual chip for AI
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of RAM. That would be more an AI. That is an AI piece, not a gaming piece. But if you have that piece available, that will be an interesting thing because if you can get that, and it's not stupid expensive, it will be interesting to see what that is capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it could be interesting. And
Well,
I'll just leave
yeah,
it at
and
that because right now with DirectX 12, multi GPU does have DirectX 12 support,
mm-hmm.
and it's base baked into it. Now, the key here is that you could have it on DirectX, but you sort of have to have driver support for it, and then you also have to have it put in on the games.
Yep.
Now, putting it on Intel is interesting because we could possibly see someone throwing out some support for it and someone possibly saying, well, what if we did this? And it would be interesting to see if maybe dual GPU does have some place in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
It would be interesting to see that. I'd say it's interesting because, in all honesty, Crossfire and SLI, as much as we all thought it was amazing back in the day, hindsight is it absolutely sucked.
Yeah, it had
Did
its
not
moments when it sucked.
it did not get the benefits that people thought they would get.
Mm.
In fact, the benefits were really nowhere close to 1 to 1. They were like maybe 30%. But the problem is that synchronizing frames just looked tearing was horrific.
Yeah.
And that's what really brought in G-Sync and FreeSync was multi GPU was they were trying to fix that problem.
Yep.
And it's a technology that's kind of lasted. Honestly, G-Sync and FreeSync are kind of not needed if you only have a single GPU that's powering and running things.
It does help if you have if you're kind of borderline on your frame rate where, you say you're running just sub 60, it really helps with the
Yeah.
tearing there. If you have a really high frame rate and you're on a 144 hertz display, it helps with the tearing there, which, you can still get tearing with a single GPU. It's just a lot less common. But kind of as you said, the interesting thing about this is it may not even necessarily be the game developers that have to build in multi GPU support. It's usually more your engine developers. So people like Epic with Unreal Engine. If we see them enable that feature all of a sudden where, hey, we support multi GPU now. That might actually open up some very interesting things for people who've already been experimenting with heterogeneous GPUs, because the whole idea from DirectX implementing it is and effectively killing SLI and Crossfire in the process was to eliminate the need of having the physical bridge and being tied down to one GPU manufacturer, and in the case of NVIDIA, one specific model of GPU. AMD had already figured out how you could have different models of GPUs running in Crossfire. It didn't necessarily work great, but it worked, and you did see a boost from it. So, if Crossfire was still a thing, I could, in theory, plug in my 7900 XTX as my primary, throw in my 6800 or 6900 XT. See, I'm still doing it. The 6900 XT as a secondary GPU, have 6 PCI Express power cables running to them, generating a whole ton of heat, and I might get 50% of my 6800's performance to boost the performance of the 7900. Wait, I called it 68 again, didn't I? Gosh dang it.
The thing
I'm
though
just
is
going to
that
stop
I
calling it
just
that. I'm going to say old
multi
GPU and new
G
GPU.
multi GPU is just something that um it really was used back in the day. And we talked about this, but I just don't see this becoming and going anywhere. Unreal's not going to do anything with it unless they think they really have it. The notion that it's Intel makes it really hard to get to jump on. I think if AMD or really if Nvidia came out with a you know 50 like a 5595 dual 5090 GPU,
Mhm.
and really put a lot of support and pressure on devs to bake support into this, then I
Mhm.
think that we could see some movement on that.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the same if we had a 9070 X2.
yeah, I think so. If you had and I think the only way that AMD or Nvidia are going to support multi GPU is two chips on the same PCB,
Yeah.
like the old X2s. Um, because I think from their perspective, they don't want people to mix and match their hardware with the other person's hardware. And um, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I just don't see multi GPU really taking a movement again. Um, that would assume a lot of things were fixed and working really well.
Yeah.
And I don't think that
Which,
any of those things are fixed or working really well. And
yeah.
I don't think there's enough pressure to do that.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that Nvidia and AMD in those respects would be like, we prefer just to make a newer chip rather than trying to sell a bunch of double the current chips to try to get more speed.
Right.
I think they realized that's just making that generation longer. So if I have one chip, one 5080, and I have the ability to go get a second 5080 and get to like closer to 5090 or 6080 performance, then it just means I'm not selling as much of the new stuff.
Right. Well, and one of the things that could happen if this does become a thing and it does get support in games is that would allow the game to support heterogeneous multiple GPUs as well. Because all they have to do is turn on the feature in DirectX, and then DirectX will handle it all. It doesn't even necessarily need driver side support because it's a core requirement of DirectX. The driver support's already there. Um, it's just nobody uses it because none of the games support it. And so, if we do see games starting to support it, then we might start seeing some interesting things. Now, to your point, it hasn't been really tested at all because there aren't very many people running multiple GPUs in a system that aren't doing things like crypto mining and non-gaming tasks. So, you know, there may be we may find out that holy crap, this thing doesn't work at all, and Microsoft has to go back to the drawing board and redo their whole system. But,
Well,
you know,
again, this is something that they threw in there and it's never been used.
yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, when they
it's
threw it
a
in there, it got abandoned. That's what happened. The AMD and Nvidia were just like, we're out. We're not doing this anymore.
which is why I
So,
think
yeah.
again it's gonna be long.
It
I don't
might be.
expect any of that. I think
I don't
that
know.
would
I think
be
it'd be cool, but be nice if it
cool.
happens.
I
But
just don't know if it's
yeah,
fixed any of the problems that we all had.
come
That's I think
on.
that's the loaded question.
Hey,
Is like,
look,
is it
look.
fixing
Keeping my
problems?
tacos warm with your 480s was not a problem.
And you know what?
It
I'll
did
be the
that very
first to
well.
admit those 440s, like 2 of those were just not used.
Yeah, no, it was diminishing returns because with the SLI at that
It
time, it
was
was usually about
garbage.
75% of the second GPU, and then half of the second GPU,
And
and then a
zero of the
quarter,
third. No, it
zero to a
wasn't
quarter of
zero.
the fourth GPU. Like
It was zero.
the
It was
last one barely
useless.
got used. It was just burning power. But you had the bragging rights. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think on that bombshell, we're going to call it a show for this evening. Thank you all
Sounds
for
good.
watching. We appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time. Do remember to jump down the doobly-doo below and like and subscribe and leave us a little comment or two and tell us how you think we're doing and why you think the future of SLI might be with Intel or not.
It's definitely not.
So until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Take care, guys. Have a good weekend.
Good night, everybody.